Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Killer Horror Critic. I'm Matt, and this is a show where I review all things horror. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Escape Room, which just released this past weekend. This is a film directed by Adam Robitel, written by Braji F. Shute and Maria Melnick. And essentially, this film is about six people who receive a mysterious invitation through a black puzzle box to come to an escape room where, if they actually make it to the end, they win $10,000. Now, I don't know about you. If I receive a creepy black puzzle box just randomly laying around for me, offering $10,000, I might think something's a little suspicious about that. But apparently, none of these people really do, or they need the money. You know how it goes. So they end up going to the escape room and soon find out that, well, if you don't solve the puzzles and make it out of the room, you will in fact die. Um, this is sort of a Saw meets Cube type of scenario, and in this video, we're going to be discussing whether or not Escape Room actually lives up to either of those titles. So first off, the thing that I want to say right away is that Escape Room has an exceptional cast. It stars Deborah Ann Woll as Amanda, Taylor Russell as Zoe, Tyler Labine as Mike, and he is, by the way, one of my just... I love Tyler Labine. I mean, anything this guy's in, he's fantastic. Tucker and Dale, for example, he completely won me over in that film and makes it as excellent as it is. Escape Room also stars Logan Miller as Ben, Nikki Dodani as Danny, and Jay Ellis as Jason. Now, each of these people has sort of a, kind of like dark hidden past. They've all been through something that we, of course, eventually learn later in the film. But the thing about them is each of them is relatable. There's nobody in this film where, no matter how much of a douchebag they are at any one point in time, all these characters are relatable. We're rooting for all of them. In particular, Deborah Ann Woll as Amanda and Tyler Labine as Mike. I thought both of these actors did a fantastic job in this film. In particular, Deborah Ann Woll, who is just phenomenal. I mean, she ends up playing this war veteran who was badly burned and has the scars to show it, and she's just a tough badass who, it is exactly the kind of person you want to root for in these movies. This is a nice change up from the comparison to the film Saw, or that franchise, because one issue that I always had with the Saw franchise was the fact that really none of the characters are ever meaningful in any way whatsoever. They're typically people that you meet for a few seconds and then they get killed off in some horribly brutal trap while someone watches, and really it's just not that interesting. And in this case, this is all of these people that we actually do care about going through scenarios like this and having to make sacrificial decisions. So there's a lot more meat when it comes to the characterization within Escape Room. Robital himself manages to direct one hell of a thrill ride of a film. This is the sort of film where once the action begins, it really never lets up. You could even say that these characters going from room to room is played out in nearly real time. So, and let's be honest, they don't really get much time to solve the puzzle in each room. So it's really kind of a pulse-pounding thriller. I mean, the pacing never lets up. And to go along with that, the production design of these rooms is just utterly fantastic. Major props to the designers of the film. Because, in a film like Escape Room, when you initially hear that, you're thinking, well, okay, these are people in one room for the length of the film. And that can get kind of boring eventually because the audience is just, getting the same visual throughout. And in this case, the characters do go to different rooms, and each room looks so much different than the other. I mean, for example, with the first two rooms, we go from kind of a normal office that suddenly becomes an oven. to a cabin out in the middle of the woods in the dead of winter. So, it's a nice little contrast in color and design, and that element of the film really keeps things interesting. So, not that it really needs it. I mean, the film is never slow, but visually, there's always something really neat to look at. And these are great environments of the characters, very claustrophobic, which helps add to the tension. And what I think that the script really does well is, in films like this, there's always the question of whether or not any of this is real. And that's always fun for the audience to kind of guess along and, try to figure out with the characters what's happening. But in this case, Robitel and the writers, they tell us right away with the opening scene, which takes place kind of later on in the film. This opening scene just has a moment in it that shows us that, yes, this is for real, and these characters' mistakes do lead to certain death. So by doing that, the audience knows right away, like, okay, we're in for something real here, and that's made just all the harder in terms emotionally because the characters are very likable, and so their deaths are tragic. They do hurt quite a bit for the most part. So you got to really give the film props for that. As for what isn't so great about Escape Room, it really all comes down to the third act and the villain. Everything up until that point is great. I myself had a total blast with it for the first two-thirds because there's just so much excitement throughout, and all the puzzles are really fun and intricate, and again, just really visually pleasing movie. But once we get to the third act, everything falls apart because Escape Room ends up making the massive mistake that I feel like Cube avoided, which is that in Cube, we never get an answer to the mystery of what's going on. It just ends with that shot of the last remaining character walking into a bright thing of light, and that's it. And in Escape Room's case, I get the feeling that either the filmmakers themselves or the studio behind it got nervous about, maybe not answering enough of the questions. So there's a lot of shoveling in of ideas that really just don't make that much sense. Essentially there's a lot of assumption going on in the ending, and I really just felt like they were trying to explain away the inexplainable. And to be frank, none of the explanations are very interesting. I would have preferred never having known what the real mystery was behind Escape Room. And then to go along with that, the villain is, a mere shadow compared to Jigsaw, where Jigsaw had sort of a connection to his victims and a reason for what he was doing. Not that a reason is needed with the horror icon or slasher villain, but, it does add an element of interest to the villain. In this case, I feel it was needed because the villain themselves is just very, they're pretty plain and boring. There's just not really much to them. They don't really have much of a reason for what they're doing, and frankly, their motives and their capabilities are pretty absurd, to the point where, for me, I just felt completely disconnected from the film at the point that we began learning about what exactly is happening here. So, all in all, I would say go check it out. I do give the film 3 stars out of 5. It's enjoyable, it's entertaining. It's really just that third act that just completely ruins things for me. It just it just fell apart so bad. But anyway, so that's that. If you enjoyed this video, anyway, so that's that. If you enjoyed this video, please follow me on Twitter at Killer from Space, on Instagram at Killer_horror_critic, and on Facebook we have our Killer Horror Critic group, which you can join. We're always talking about horror news and discussions there. And And I'll be trying to post these videos 5 days a week with different reviews on all the new films and sometimes comics and books that are coming out. So please continue to follow me, and I hope you enjoyed. And until then, have a good night, horror fans. Take care.